Welcome back to the Legal Brief, the show where we crush the various legal myths and misinformation surrounding various areas of the gun world. I'm your host, Adam Kraut, and today we're talking about guns in the workplace. And no, I don't mean those disgruntled postal employees.
These ultra-unique ammunition displays from Ballistic Concepts are the ultimate in gun guy gifts. From tiny to massive, they offer calibers from mild to wild, including things like the classic M855 and 45 ACP, or the massive 950 JDJ and 20mm Vulcan, all handmade right here in the United States. To get 10% off these bad boys, use the code TGC10 over at ballisticdisplays.com.
The NRA Board of Directors election is right around the corner, and I know a lot of you are very interested to hear about my stance on the problems gun owners face. Head on over to my website, adamkraut.com, to learn more about my views on the issues. The link is in the description. Guns in the workplace has been a hot topic over the past couple of years. Many employers specifically prohibit firearms from being carried in the workplace. The information pertaining to this is usually found in employee handbooks, posted signage, etc. What many of you want to know is whether an employer can legally do this and what recourse or options do you have. You may be surprised to know that there is currently no federal law regulating whether an employer can prohibit firearms at the workplace. Some states have stepped in with their own laws to regulate the conduct of employers and to protect employees with so-called parking lot gun laws. These laws prohibit employers from banning firearms from the parking lot of their premises, but still allow them to regulate whether an employee may carry at work. So what are you left with? Well, if the state you live in does have such a law in effect, you'll want to know exactly what it allows you to do. For example, Kentucky has a parking lot gun law in effect. The law states that no person, including but limited to an employer who is the occupant of real property, shall prohibit any person who is legally entitled to possess a firearm from possessing a firearm in a vehicle on the property. So if you're legally allowed to possess a gun, you can have it in your car. The law also provides that an employer that fires, disciplines, demotes, or otherwise punishes an employee who is lawfully exercising a right guaranteed by the law and who is engaging in conduct in compliance with the statute shall be liable in civil damages. So, if you're in compliance with the law, and your employer takes action against you for having a firearm, you are able to seek relief in court.
What are you, nuts? This is the 90s. We're gonna sue you.
It also has 4 instances where a firearm may be removed from the vehicle or handled. Those instances are in the cases of self-defense, defense of another, defense of property, or as authorized by the owner, lessee, or occupant of the property. In essence, the law allows for an employee to keep a firearm in their vehicle, but only under certain conditions. Unfortunately for some of us out there, many states still do not have such a law in effect, and even then, the law might not protect you in every case. As an example of someone who may not be protected under the law, a case was brought to the Sixth Circuit, which includes Kentucky, where a UPS employee was terminated for having a firearm on company property. Bruce Hawley, the plaintiff in this matter, experienced car trouble on his way to work. His supervisor gave him permission to take his car to the repair shop. Prior to leaving, Hawley asked one of his coworkers if he could place his handgun in the coworker's car, since he wasn't comfortable leaving it unattended at the repair shop. Not a bad idea, right? Worthy of noting for the law's purpose, Hawley had a concealed carry permit. The coworker agreed, and they transferred the handgun from Hawley's car to the coworker's car in the UPS parking lot. Ultimately, this made its way up to management, and Hawley was terminated. Without digging too deep into the case, the Sixth Circuit looked at the law regarding firearms in cars on employer property in Kentucky. Hawley challenged the termination under several provisions, one which made it unlawful for a private employer to prohibit employees holding a concealed deadly weapons license from carrying concealed deadly weapons in vehicles owned by the employee. The court determined that Hawley did not fit within the clearly defined parameters of the law to fall under its protection, that being in vehicles owned by the employee, as the firearm was transferred from his car to another employee's. It also rejected an argument that the removal of his firearm from the vehicle fit into one of the 4 statutory exemptions that we just covered. As such, he had no form of recourse against UPS. The link to the full decision and discussion is down in the description. We see that in Bruce Hawley's case, removing the firearm from his vehicle pulled him outside of the statute's protection. Other states have broad protections. For instance, in Oklahoma, employers cannot prohibit firearms from parking lots as long as the person is not a convicted felon and the vehicle is locked. It does authorize employers to restrict all other areas. And then there are states like Pennsylvania that have no law protecting employees at all. As Tim Stewart found out, leaving a firearm in your vehicle when company policy prohibits it in Pennsylvania is a surefire way to lose your job and not have any recourse. Keep in mind, employment law plays a part in some of this. In an at-will employment state, you can be fired because your supervisor doesn't like that you wear a blue shirt. If you want to know the specifics about Tim's case, there's a link in the description. So what does this all mean for you? First, you need to identify whether your state has a law in effect that would protect you if you were to take a firearm onto your employer's property. Second, if there is such a law, you need to determine if there are certain permissible actions. For example, Kentucky's 4 instances where the removal of a firearm is authorized by law. If there are, you need to ensure compliance with them. Otherwise, you may no longer be protected by the statute, as was the case with Mr. Holly. If you live in a state where there is no such law, you need to determine whether your employer has any policies against firearms in the parking lot or premises. If there are, you need to research whether there are legal repercussions for violating the policy or just potential loss of employment, which for some is pretty devastating. Interestingly, some states have prohibited employers from searching their employees' cars for firearms, like Florida. Other states, like Georgia, allow it in a situation that would lead a reasonable person to believe that accessing the vehicle is necessary to prevent an immediate threat to human health, life, or safety. And when it comes to liability, the can of worms is opened. If an employee commits a crime or an act of violence with a firearm they brought to work, employers can be sued 100 different ways under theories of negligence. It could also potentially have workers' compensation ramifications. It remains to be seen, though, if you're the victim of workplace violence but were denied the ability to carry a firearm, whether you or your estate would be able to successfully sue your employer under theories of negligence. So what's the takeaway? You'll need to see if your state has any laws in place that protect your ability to have a firearm on company property, including the parking lot. If there isn't, and you choose to bring a gun anyway, you need to be aware of the risks, which could include losing your job with no recourse against your employer. As we saw earlier, even if there is a law in place, the recourse you have may be limited, especially if you're not in direct compliance with the law. So be smart when deciding whether or not you're going to carry at work. Tired of old wives' tales being whispered around the gun shop counter? Make sure you share this video with your friends. Don't forget to hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed already, you better make that happen. Hang out on Facebook. Be sure to join us on TGC Nation. Check out my website, adamkraut.com, and as always, thanks for watching.
The shirts worn in today's video on The Gun Collective have been provided by Patriot Patch. Closed captions have also been brought to you by Patriot Patch Company. Be sure to click the link in the video description to check out all of their great products, including their cleaning mats.